Pegassi have got a new flagship. For a long time now we've loved or hated the Infernus, but it's getting old, so a new replacement has finally arrived. On this episode of GTA 5 Car Reviews, we're going to be reviewing this new replacement. Let's find out whether it will be as bonkers as its predecessor. Here it is. It's called the Zentorno. It has a big 6.8 litre V12 engine in the middle behind the driver. It will go from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 2.3 seconds, and flat out will reach 213 miles an hour. Like the old Infernus, it has 4-wheel drive, and you of course get the classic Pegassi flagship scissor doors. This is direct response to cars like the Grotti Turismo R. Oh yes, the price for this monstrous machine is $725,000 online. Let's find out about this possible Turismo R beater by performing our usual tests. So what do we think about looks? Here is the old flagship, the old Infernus, my favourite car. As we can see, it's clearly a supercar, but it's not really that mental looking. Certainly not when you go and compare it to the new flagship. The Zentorno is covered in holes and grills and all sorts of bits of equipment and machinery to attract attention. We can see that it's also a little bit bigger than the Infernus. This basically is an attention drawing magnet, even more than the old Infernus. Even when we go around to the front, we can see that the headlights are a different style. There's a massive air intake on the front. The back of the Infernus is one of the only fairly striking features, with that big central exhaust covered in pipes. Let's go and look at the exhaust of the Zentorno. As we can see, it's not quite as mental, although you do get those big holes on the back over the engine cover. It basically has no rear view windscreen at all. As we can see then, the Zentorno is even more mental to look at than the old Infernus. Looks wise, this is definitely a worthy successor to the old flagship. Right, now to see just how much faster the Zentorno is, I'm going to do a little drag race. As you can see, I'm in the Infernus, and this in the green car over here in the Zentorno is Alistair. He's another racing driver like me, and he's also very, very highly skilled. So we're going to see just how fast we can go, and let's see if the Zentorno can beat the Infernus. There's a lot at stake here. Since the Infernus is my favourite car, I have quite a lot to lose. Okay, let's see how it turns out. Immediately he's quicker off the line. We're almost neck and neck. He is slowly creeping ahead of me though. Oh, there he goes. This is not looking good. No! This is not good. And he's gone. This really isn't going very well. He's pretty much gone. Well, that goes to prove how much faster the Zentorno is compared to the old Infernus. The answer is lots. So then, let's check out how this car takes corners. With the old Infernus there was a little bit of understeer at times, so let's see how this car does. Ooh, yeah, there is again a bit of understeer, but again, just like the Infernus, it's very, very easy to deal with. All you do is just use the brakes, and the acceleration is so great that any understeer can be dealt with and you won't really lose much speed around the corner. One thing I will say compared to the Infernus is the steering. It still has the same heavy steering as the Infernus, but the car feels a lot lighter. So it's a sort of strange combination of light car and yet heavy-ish Pegassi steering. So I've never driven anything quite like this. In ways it's different to the Infernus because it feels lighter, but yet it still has the same very similar steering, although I will say the steering is more responsive. It changes direction slightly quicker than the Infernus, but as I say, there's still the heaviness, which is quite characteristic of Pegassi. They're big, brutal, powerful cars. But anyway, this thing seems to handle quite well. It feels quite well balanced. there's not quite as much understeer as with the Infernus, and the steering is fairly responsive, even if it is slightly heavy. But the main progression is the lightness. This car is much lighter than the Infernus. Okay, so what about drifting? As we know, the Infernus was an okay drifter as long as you were as mental as it was and didn't overdo it. But for the normal driver it could be quite tricky to drift the Infernus. Let's see how its replacement does. Let's see whether they've made it any easier to slide around. Now let's see how slippery and sideways we can get our Pegassi Zentorno. Let's see if it's as intimidating to slide as it is to look at. We'll come up to a corner like this. Ooh, yes, it does like power. All you have to do, like the Infernus, is bring it in and push the power on, and it will slide. It was very manageable as well. There was no hint of it trying to kill me there. Now let's try and use the brakes. We'll come in, stomp the brakes and turn. Wow, yes. And then when you want it to come back in, just give a little bit of opposite lock and it comes straight back again. Let's try it again here. Yep, again. It may say four-wheel drive, but don't be fooled. Like the Infernus, this thing is fairly slippery when you want it to be. Let's try some handbrake. A little tap handbrake. I didn't really put much opposite lock on at all there. Let's try again here. Handbrake. Yeah, wow, very, very dramatic slide. I didn't have to use much opposite lock there, or the brakes. This car is exceptionally easy to drift. The Infernus, as we know, could be tricky to drift, but this, you can fling it all over the place and it will come straight back in. That is a big progression with the Infernus. The old flagship was a scary car that you had to, know what you were doing to slide it, but this car will happily fling itself sideways, and it doesn't really take much to get it back in. It really is very, very fun and very, very good to drift. Now we're going to do a lap with our Pegassi Zentorno and put it on the leaderboard afterwards. Let's see how it does around the racetrack. Let's see just how fast the Zentorno can go around the track. Listen to that glorious engine. No wheel spin off the line because of the four-wheel drive. Acceleration is absolutely monstrous. And despite the understeer, it corners very well as well. Hopefully, this car will place very, very, very well on the leaderboard. Let's see how these brakes will do now for this hard turn. Very good. Now this is the big straight where it can unleash its enormous V12 engine. This is a very, very fast car with excellent acceleration, and this really is its natural territory. Here's the finish line, and across it in, let's see, 1 minute 20.115. We'll go and put that up on the leaderboard in a minute. Little pick of the nose there. Lovely. Here it is, the Pegassi Zentorno has officially beaten the Grotti Turismo R. It is now our fastest ever car. It's done the lap time in 1:20.115, whilst the Turismo did it in 1:26.43. There we are, the Zentorno is now the fastest car to ever do the racetrack. So, it's time to come to conclusions. What do I think about the Pegassi Zentorno? Well, I have to say I am very impressed with this car. It sounds just as good as the old Infernus. In fact, the engine note is practically identical, but it's a lot more approachable. You see, the Infernus was a sort of psychopath lunatic mobile for people with lots of money who could really drive well. Granted, once you'd mastered it, it was a very, very fun car, but you couldn't just get in it and go. This car is quite the opposite. This car, you can open up the exotic scissor doors, get in and thrash, no matter what your driving skills. The Infernus was an elitist car for people who could really drive, and it was fantastic. Whereas this, you don't have to be a good driver to drive it. You can be an average driver who's very rich, you can buy this, you can get straight in it and drive it. The handling is very, very good, although not quite as sharp as the Turismo are. There's a big question. Which would I choose, this or the Turismo? As I just said, the Turismo has sharper handling, but I don't think that the Turismo will ever sound as good or thrill half as much as this car. This car is a bellowing monster that looks absolutely insane. I think I would choose this car, because the handling is almost as good, it's mentally fast, it looks pretty good. I'm sold. This is a fantastic and very, very worthy successor to the Infernus. I think this car is absolutely mind-bogglingly, astronomically good, even if it isn't quite as sharp as a Turismo. The Zentorno is a triumph for Pegassi. I really would choose this car. It is fantastic.